Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the Game Dev Tutorials. Today we're going to work on fitting towers to grid. We'll create a new function in our grid, our square grid, that will get a position for a location. Currently we're not filling that variable, so this is a function I usually have. I stripped it out when I add it back in. We're going to pass grid through all the attackable objects so that we have access to the grid in order for them to place things or in order for them to work with the grid and react to the grid. So that's important. That'll take a little while. We got to add it to all the update functions, so that'll be that. We got to pass the old placing, which is 30 pixels above the character. In through the grid functions in order to gather the info we need in order to decide whether we can place the object and also where to place the object. So that's important, and we'll do that in Hero. If the grid location is filled, which we will have that information from doing this, then we'll do nothing, and if it's empty, then we'll place the building in the grid, and then we will color filled grid locations black so that we can see them more apparently. Okay? That's our goals for today, and then we should be ready to do A-Star, and I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to be able to get all of A-Star done in by Tuesday to get the video out. We'll see. I'll have it to you guys as soon as I can. It may take me the whole week next week to get that done, because I do need to strip down the functions down to their basic selves, and then I need to make sure that it works really well, because that is an area where a lot of bugs happen. And yeah, anyway, but that's neither here nor there for this tutorial, so let's jump right in. First things first, let's add that function that I talked about, and that function is going to be called get public virtual vector 2 get pose, so position, from loc, right? Yeah, location. So location would be like a slot or whatever. And then we are going to feed it in a vector 2 for the location. Okay? So here we're just going to return. It's a pretty simple function, but it's important, so you don't have to do this in a million different places and then get the math wrong once and add a bunch of bugs. Doing it like this is the correct way to do it. I don't usually tell you guys something's correct or incorrect. I try to say I like it or I don't like it, but this, using a function to do something like this is, or a property would be fine too, but is the correct way to do this. Because otherwise, every time you need to do this little minor algorithm, if you don't get the math right for some reason, you just screw one little thing up, or you use two x's and two y's, or instead of one x and one y. Next thing you know, you have bugs, and you're hunting for them, and your brain sees the code and goes, "Oh, I know what that code is," and it skips right over it. And then it's really hard to bug test your own, to debug your own code in that way. So anyway, we need this, and you'll see why by the end of the tutorial. So we're taking the location that we passed in, and we're multiplying it times the dimensions of the slots. So slot dims dot x, and then same thing but for y. And this will get us the top left corner of the location. That's a good thing. You might say, "Oh, but I want the middle because everything's else based on the middle." Yeah, except for when you're doing non-square or rectangle slot locations, then you'll have to start testing for triangles, and then you want this point this way. So each time you're just going to add your slot dems to it if you need to get to the middle. It's simple. You could even create a second function if you wanted to, but that's up to you. That's a personal preference kind of thing. Okay, so it's this simple. We're just adding the start pose to the location times the slot dimensions. That'll give us the top left corner. Pretty simple stuff. Now, here in attack object, we need to add the square grid. Grid. Sorry about that. Alright, and then we need to... This should break a lot of things once I build it. So, well, it shoulda. Alright, we'll move on and make sure it breaks elsewhere. So let's go over here and jump into units. So like hero, for instance, or unit itself would probably be good. And then, this is why it didn't break. That should have had the other information being passed back to it. So square grid, I'm gonna copy paste this piece here. This is what I want, because that's, and this, that should break some stuff at least. Mob, yeah, mob didn't like that, so good. We don't want it to like that. This is a lot. Those already should have been passing enemy back. These are using the wrong base update, and that obviously wasn't causing bugs yet, but it would have eventually caused bugs as things get more and more complicated. We are going to want the update functions from their base classes to also run almost always. There are times where you don't, but yeah, that should be fine. It is. Sometimes the compiler doesn't whoops. Sometimes the compiler doesn't fix the error, remove the errors from the error list once they're fixed. It happens. When that happens and you're pretty sure it's right, you just need to build your product. Like, see, it's still not catching that one, so I'm going to build it. There it goes. Okay. And then we do here. Great. Now we're going to get some of these kinds of issues, which is fine. This is the update for player, so we definitely want player passing in our square grid as well, so that we can pass it here. So that's good. Lots of these are going to happen. It's just a lot of them, making sure that we're getting all of them done. And I'm going to have to double check them all because they weren't done correctly, and that's on me. I'm sorry, guys. That's sometimes when recording, I know it's not like public speaking, but it kind of is in a way, because I know there's people listening even if they're not listening at the exact time. I'm not the greatest public speaker, so all right. So we're now, that's passing them into the base classes there, and I don't think we did hero. So we did not do hero. Hero needs to match unit. So we need these. And then those need to go in here. Okay. And then we need to find hero. And we need to make sure it has all the proper stuff going into it. Same thing for spawn point, which I don't think we did that one either. So let's do that. And okay, because we want all attackable objects to have access to the grid. So spawn points. I clicked the wrong thing. Portal. Lots of little stuff here, but all of this being wrong, I'm telling you that it'll cause bugs. Sometimes you won't check that you're referring to the proper update function, and all of a sudden you're like, why is this not working? A couple hours later you're like, oh my god, that was so simple, but I missed it. And then you wasted a bunch of time. And in this case, I would have wasted your time, and I would feel bad for that. All right, so we did spawn points. Did we do buildings? We did not do buildings. Square grid, and then enemy grid. Okay, buildings. And here's another one that just didn't even have enemy in it. Mistakes. But that's why we clean up, right? That's why we come back. We make sure that we get it all right. We make sure that and when we diagnose something is incorrect, we make sure that we fix it, right? We don't just leave it, oh, well, it kind of works, so we'll just leave it. No, don't do that, right? Like, you need to fix broken things all the time. So that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. That's all three of the different buildings. And it's correct there. Okay, good. Alright, so I'm going to just build it and make sure everything works right now, because there was a lot of little things in there that were wrong. And press 1, and our grid. Cool. I think we're working. We're good. Everything that we just worked with, I believe, is still working, which is good. But just to double check in there, that's a good thing to do when you have to fix mistakes. Because sometimes fixing a mistake actually ends up breaking the program because it was a couple broken things that made it look like it was working, even if it actually wasn't. Okay. Cool. Let me quickly check. Did that? We did that. So now we're working in Hero to pass the position in. So that's where we're at. So Hero. Well, I guess we got to find him over here. Or in here. Okay. There we go. It's now over here because I pinned it. Alright, so we put our building here, and this one line of code is going to become quite a few lines of code. So there's a lot of extra to do here. So we're going to need each one of these variables separate, otherwise you'd be able to put functions within functions, which would work great. But we need access to these variables, so we're going to save the variables. Vector2 temp loc, so this is the location on the grid, not the position of the actual piece of art. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Get slot from pixel, right? And then we have this position that we're feeding it. This position does not account for offset. It does not need to know about offset because it's a physical, because our character is in physical space and this grid is in physical space, so we don't have to worry about the offset of the screen. So when we're clicking on the screen, our mouse is not in physical space. Our mouse is in screen space. And so, or game space, you could say, instead of physical space, whatever you want to call it. The mouse is in 2D screen space. It can't go, I mean, technically if you have multiple monitors, it can go to different positions, but not within your game. So it's what's called screen space, which goes from 0, to whatever your resolution is, right? That's screen space. So we have to then offset the mouse in order to put it into game space, right? But all of these are already working within game space, so we don't have to account for the offset. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and then we are going to get the grid location because we have to be able to test if it's filled or whatever. And we're also going to put it in somewhere else, so we're gonna save it so we don't have to run this program this bit twice. And that's not what I want. Grids get slot from location. Okay, so here we got the location from the pixel, and we put in the spot that we used to place it. Now we are putting the temp location into our get slot from location. This, if you didn't need to save these variables, you could put this function in that spot. and it would all work. But we need this, and you'll see in a minute that we're going to use it, so they're not inside one another. They're not nested in each other. Okay, now here we're going to test if the location is not equal to null and we have not location filled, so the location is not filled, and we have not location impassable, right? So impassable could have been set when we were loading the level. Filled typically is only set when we add something to the grid, but anyway. So all of these three things are true. We come in here and we can actually add our buildings. But first, we know we're going to add our building now. So let's fill our slot, and then we can move to creating our building. But we don't actually know where it's going to go yet. But I'm going to do it this way, so I don't want to redo the work too many times. Building temp building equals it's arrow tower, so it's this code here, right? Oops, can't click today. There we go. That goes there. Except for right now, we don't want to do anything here. And I'm going to set the temp building's position just to, for right now, the new function we just used, which is the grid position. Now, again, this is going to be top left corner, so we're going to... This is not going to be correct, and I'm going to show you why, but I'm going to do it in 2 steps so that you see it. So we have the grid dot get pose from loc, and then we're going to give it the temp loc. Remember I told you we needed that variable. There it is. And then we're going to say grid dot slot dems over 2. So that will shift it in the middle, right? Technically this isn't done yet, but we'll get to the showing what we need to do next here. So game globals dot pass building temp building. Okay, so that's all in. And then we needed to do one other thing in our square grid, and that's to come down here. And this is our different colors, right? So our else if, we're going to say slots j k, because remember we're using j and k because I removed I. It was something else in my last program. Slots jk dot filled, right? So we're asking if this thing's filled, then we need to give it like dark gray or something. Dark gray. Okay. So now filled boxes will show up dark gray. Cool. Let's build our program, and then I'll show you what we needed to change here. So let's put our grid up. I'm going to push 1. Oh, there we go. Well, that's not what it's supposed to do. It's putting 2 down. That is not what it's supposed to do. Okay. Well, there it is. It's right there. I didn't remove the old one. So that's why I was doing 2. It shouldn't have been doing 2. Let's try this again. Here's our project, or our game. Put our grid back on. And if you'll notice, the bottom of the tower is out. Why? Because we set the middle of the tower. So we need to shift this up. And in general, almost always, it's a quarter of the tower. I just know that from experience. I'm just telling you. So we're going to shift this up so that it looks like the bottom of the tower is in the middle of the square. Right? That's what our goal is. So let's go ahead and do that. So we are going to add new vector 2. We are going to add nothing horizontally, and we are going to add a negative or subtract the temp building dot dems dot y times 0.25f. Okay. This is why we have temp building, is so that I can put this in here. If you try to just create it and stick it in here, you won't have the dimensions, so you can't call them. Okay. Now we should be good to go. This should be the last run of this thing. We're placing our towers, and they all kind of look pretty good. Now you could adjust that pixel by pixel if you want to. You can even on each individual building have like a separate small offset that each building has, just in case the art doesn't perfectly line up, so on and so forth. But if you can tell, each one of these squares now calls itself filled, and that's going to be super important for the A star, because if you don't have anything filled, then you're not doing a whole lot with your pathing. So we want things to path like in between like that, so these mobs go and either go around this way or they go around this way, so on and so forth. So we'll get the pathing in next, but this was assigning things to the grid. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, make sure that you push that like button. It really does help me out. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. You know, it makes everything feel a little bit more legit. And then if you're learning something here, oh, that's a bug. That should have ended the game, but we'll deal with that later. But anyway, if you guys are learning and you want us to help support me, you know, do me a favor, throw a couple bucks at Patreon. It would make a big difference to me and to this channel, and I can give you guys better and better tutorials. All right, I hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you guys next time.